I've worked on good teams and I've worked on bad teams. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what makes a team good and why we're focusing on teamwork in this class. Now, this is a pretty tough thing to teach, I gotta say. It's definitely, compared to hash tables, just far more challenging for me to feel like I can effectively convey good techniques for you. But I hope you take it seriously, even though it is a little bit of a soft skill. It's tricky. Okay. So project 3, it is a team project. This semester, we're doing teams of 2. And there's 2 main reasons I'm making it a team project. One is I want you to get practice working on a team. And second, well, since it's a project that's really open-ended, it's nice to get some creativity. Now there's another reason that's not actually as important, which is that it does reduce the stress level because you have somebody on the journey with you, but I will note that it is possible to do this project solo, and for those of you who run into an issue where you have to do it solo because you're commuting or you have a disability or you have whatever other condition or situation in your life, we'll honor that. But we really want you to work on a team if we can. And so this lecture, this part of the lecture, I'm gonna draw a little bit from this Berkeley project called Teaming by Design. So to give you some background, in 61B, the software engineering project, the first time I taught this class on my own, which was spring 2015, I had a project called Gitlet. Then in 2016, we did Editor. In 2017, we did Databases. And in 2018, we did Build Your Own World, okay, which I've kept because it was so highly rated. People loved this project last semester. We'll see if we do this time. So when I moved from solo to partner, I thought life would be strictly easier. I thought people would be happier and the stress level would be lower. But in fact, without giving any preparation for doing teamwork, I was surprised to find that something like 8% of 2017 partners were unhappy with their partnership. Like, we're pretty upset about it, which doesn't sound like that many people necessarily, you think? But when you figure that you have 1,000 students or more, that's 80, 100 people that are actually pretty upset, and you need to work with them and deal with them in some way. So teamwork, it turns out, was harder than I had naively believed, even on a 2-week project and a data structures course. So I'm just going to reflect a little bit on why some teams fail and some succeed, and what I think you could do to make things better. Okay, so in the real world, the reason, of course, that we have teams is tasks out there are too large to be handled by a single person. So the technology companies that will try and hire you because of your skills from this class and others, the things that you build are too big for you to build alone. Now, of course, when faced with the same task, some teams will succeed and others may fail, and so the question you might ask yourself is why? So I'm going to talk just for a moment to set the stage, because I'm going to draw on some research about collective intelligence. I want to talk about individual intelligence. So in 1904, Spearman, very famous educational psychologist from way back in the day, he very famously demonstrated that there existed indeed something called intelligence. And so in the paper that I'll be citing in the next slide more heavily, and I'll tell you what the paper is, Woolley says, summarizing Spearman's work, people who do well on one mental task tend to do well on most others, despite large variations in the test's contents and methods of administration. So that factor, that underlying correlating factor, is called intelligence. So it exists. Basically, there's no reason to believe necessarily that some mental tasks should not be anti-correlated with others. But what has been observed by Spearman and replicated bajillions of times since is that people who do well on certain mental tasks tend to do well on most others. Okay? Now, intelligence, Woolley describes, it also has the feature that it can be quickly measured. In less than an hour or so, you can give someone a set of mental tasks that do map well to how they'll do on many other mental tasks. Now, it's not perfect, but it does. It's something you can do. And importantly, intelligence does actually reliably predict not just meaningless mental tasks like, some kind of math type problems or predicting specific little patterns, but it also predicts important life outcomes over a long period of time. So that includes how well you do in school, your success in your occupation, and even your life expectancy, interestingly. Now, I would like to note that there's nothing in Spearman's work that says that this factor is genetic, that you're born with it, that you're stuck with it from some early age. We just know that there exists some kind of factor. It seems very likely, at least given the social science research out there. Okay. we'll talk a little bit more about this notion of intelligence and what it means for you individually in a future lecture just for a little bit, but this lecture specifically is about teamwork, so I'm going to table that for now. So, group intelligence. In the paper that I mentioned about Woolley, this is a paper from 2010, and it's called Evidence for a Collective Intelligence Factor in the Performance of Human Groups. So basically what Woolley was trying to do is to say, well, why is it that some groups fail and some succeed? Could we show that even on a wide variety of tasks, that some groups are just better at task solving? It's not that some are better at video games and some are better at architectural designs or whatever. It's that groups in general, if you give them the right preparation, that they should be able to do well. The idea is, could there be some analog to individual intelligence? And indeed, they found that on a wide variety of tasks, there is some correlation. Groups that tend to do well on any specific task will tend to do well on the others. Okay? And so that means, as I said out loud a moment ago, that groups do seem to have some sort of group intelligence that is analogous to individual intelligence as it was demonstrated and explained by Spearman. Okay? So where does it come from? What is this collective intelligence? Well, the natural thing you would assume is, well, if the group is composed of all intelligent people, then the group as a whole will be intelligent. But what they found, and actually rather surprisingly, is that collective intelligence is not correlated with the average or even the max intelligence of each group. And by max intelligence, I mean you pick the person who has the highest score on some kind of standard intelligence measurement that maybe Spearman would have used. So that is to say that this collective intelligence, this ability to solve problems, is not actually significantly correlated in this particular study with average or max intelligence of each group. They found instead that collective intelligence was correlated with three things. The first was the average social sensitivity of group members. Now, it seems like social sensitivity is a hard thing to judge, but there actually is a standard measurement called reading the mind in the eyes test. It's really interesting. You just see only literally someone's eyes, and it tries to tell, you try to figure out what emotion are they feeling. It's very challenging, at least for me. But I can stare at them for like a minute and then eventually be like, okay, yeah, I think I know what it is. So try it out if you're curious. Another was how equally distributed the group was in conversational turn-taking. So if you have one person who is constantly talking and dominating the conversation, they will tend, as a group, to do poorly. And then, curiously, it's also correlated with the percentage of females in the group. That's not to say you should discriminate and not hire males. Instead, the paper suggests that this is due to a correlation with greater social sensitivity, and they talk a little bit about the math there. But those are the three factors out of the many, many, many factors they looked at, that if you analyze them individually, you see a correlation with the collective intelligence. In other words, the ability to solve general problems. Okay? Now, presumably, and part of the reason why we're doing teamwork on Project 3 is we're hoping that Project 3 will help you to build the skills that will lead to greater group or collective intelligence in your life. So, some tips. Okay, I'll give you some tips about why things that you can do, even in just a two-person team, to make things better. So one thing that's very important is to realize that this is, yes, it's an assignment you have to do for a class, you have to write code, you have to submit it and review it and whatever else, and you're going to be using IntelliJ, but really, it's now a human thing. It's about relationships. It's about you and another person having to interact. So it's important that you guys treat each other well. So you should maybe you know each other really well already. Maybe you've just met in this class, but it's very important that even when you maybe get annoyed with each other, that you treat each other with respect. I think it's very important that you're open and honest, and that if you're getting peeved at your partner for not showing up to things or not pulling their weight, that you say this directly to them. Or if you find yourself falling behind, not putting in the work that you need to be putting in to be a good partner, you should acknowledge this fact and explain why. And there will be unsatisfactory moments, and you may fall short of your best self, or your partner may, but that's fine. We're humans. We're not going to do everything right all of our lives. And of course, make sure that you're setting expectations for each other. So don't assume the other person's just going to go and do their part. This is a collaborative venture, and you have to make sure you're setting expectations as you go. And again, as I said earlier, if you're not meeting expectations for each other or for yourself, just say it. That's fine. Okay? Now, one of the recommendations in the teaming materials that I've linked is that an important part of teamwork is reflexivity. Okay, so reflexivity is defined as a group's ability, in this case just a two-person group, to collectively reflect upon their team's objectives, their strategies, and their processes, and to adapt to them accordingly. Now, you only have 2 weeks-ish, not even 2 weeks for this project, so there's not going to be a lot of process reflection. But they say that you should cultivate a collaborative environment in which giving and receiving feedback on an ongoing basis is seen as a mechanism for reflection and learning, right? This is a class, and so you should treat this feedback as a way for you to be learning. Okay? You might find it useful to click on this description of best practices. It's a little heavy-handed for our class, but if you want, it gives actually like a whole set of things you can do, but maybe this is starting to feel a little bit too much like business school. Up to you. All right. But I have some key ideas from this document to follow, and because this video is getting a little long, I'm going to call it here, and then I'll give some tips for best practices for teamwork in the next video.